What is up, everybody? It's Matt Modi here with Jedi Modi Sports Network, here to give you some NFL player props for the Week 8 NFL betting slate. I have 4 pumped up props for you guys to hammer. If you are not familiar, pumped up prop means I find a player prop that I like, but instead of taking it at the main line, I just pump up those numbers a little bit to get pretty juicy odds. The logic being, if you can get the odds high enough, you only need to hit one of the plays that I give out in order to be profitable. And if you hit multiple, then you are very profitable. And the success has been incredible. So I've been doing this for 3 days so far. So granted, a very small sample size, but we've been profitable every single day. For Thursday night football, I gave out 2. I had Dalton Kincaid, 60 plus receiving yards. That cashed. I had Mike Evans, 80 plus receiving yards. That did not cash. We end the day up over 1 unit on these 2 pumped up props. Thanks for the odds. That brings our total profit on these pumped up props for the 3 days up 8.75 units in 3 days. Now, I'm not going to be profitable every single day, unfortunately, but if we can consistently get one of these 4 to hit, then we're going to be consistently making money. So let's hope for that. The NFL season had been brutal, just brutal for me leading up to that moment. So I'm happy that I found something that seems to work. Let's hope we can continue the success. Real quick, before I get into today's picks, I would appreciate it if you're not already, if you could hit that subscribe button. That helps me out a ton if you want to follow me along with this pumped up journey. Also, if you could like the video and comment as well. If you're tailing, if you're fading, whatever it may be, comment and let me know. And let's get into these pumped up props. So the first one that we're going to go ahead and lock in here is in the Texans versus Panthers game. And we're taking CJ Stroud, 300 plus passing yards. This is at plus 400 odds at Caesars. So for this game, the Texans versus Panthers, coming off a bye, the Texans are getting Tank Dell back. In my opinion, this is a smash spot for the Texans offense. Now, I will admit, just to peel back the curtain a little bit, I was debating going between Nico Collins or Tank Dell, but I decided to settle on CJ Stroud passing because I couldn't tell. I didn't have a good feel for what receiver it was going to be, so I just figured let's go with the quarterback who I think is going to have a lot of success. The reason why I think this is a smash spot, just look at the injuries that the Panthers are facing on defense. It's insane. So on IR is J.C. Horn and Jeremy Chin. That's their starting cornerback and safety. 2 of their starting edge rushers are out for this game. Now Brian Burns is not practicing with an injury. He's probably not going to play. And their current starting safeties are both on the injury report. It's just disgusting, the injuries that the Panthers are dealing with. And the Texans have been one of, if not the worst rushing team in the NFL so far this season, but they have been pretty good passing. And if you just look at their stats, right? According to DVOA, they have the 3rd worst rushing offense in the NFL, but the 11th best passing offense in the NFL. So that stuff is pretty good. Meanwhile, if you look at the Panthers, they have the 3rd worst defense in the NFL overall. Really bad, 3rd worst defense. Admittedly, their advanced stats make them look a little bit better as a passing defense than they are against the run. But considering all the injuries and considering how bad the Texans have been at running the ball, my guess here is that they're going to opt to throw and that they're going to have success doing so. So 300 yards is something that CJ Stroud has done twice so far this year. Let's hope he can do it again for plus 400 odds. I really like that as our first play. Next up, in the Jaguars versus Steelers game, we're taking George Pickens, 90 plus receiving yards. This is at plus 340 odds at DraftKings. As gross as the Steelers offense has been this year, George Pickens has been pretty awesome. Despite the fact that he is a boomer bust type of receiver, he's been pretty boom recently and on the season as a whole. He's gone over 100 yards in the past 2 weeks. He also went over 100 yards week 2 against the Browns, who have literally the number 1 passing defense in the NFL, according to DVOA. In 6 games total this year for the Steelers, he's had 2 bad games and 4 good ones. And there's only been 1 time this year where he went over his mainline receiving yardage prop, the non-pumped up number, but didn't hit 90 receiving yards. In that game, he had 75 against the Raiders. Now, don't get me wrong. Don't hear what I'm not saying. This Steelers offense is still very gross, but they're at least able to have success when they're throwing to George Pickens. And they're consistently giving him targets. Again, he's played 6 games. Here are the targets he has received: 7, 10, 6, 7, 10, 8. That's pretty good. Last week was Deontay Johnson's return from an injury, and George Pickens still got 8 targets, which I really like, especially for someone that can take a screen to the house or can catch a 50-yard bomb. That's pretty good. And this is also a plus matchup against the Jaguars. Now, when you look at the Jaguars' advanced stats like DVOA, it paints them as a pretty good defense, but their raw stats, they've been giving up a ton of passing yards, and they give up the second most passing yards per game, and they average the most passing attempts against per game as well. And for what it's worth, props.cash is who I look at for all of this type of research. They project him to be at 90 receiving yards, so that's good news for us as well. Plus 340 odds is pretty good. Let's hope we can get that one to cash as our second play. Third up, our third pick of the slate in the Browns versus Seahawks game, we're taking Amari Cooper, 80 plus receiving yards. This is at plus 320 odds, also at DraftKings. Now, last week was a weird game for Amari Cooper. He's been pretty hit or miss his entire career, and that's also gone on this year as well. He's played 6 games. He's gone 37 receiving yards in week 1. Then in weeks 2 and 3, he had 90 and 116 receiving yards. Then after that, he had 16. Now, this was with the rookie quarterback who was clearly overmatched. He only had 16 yards. Then he had 108 receiving yards against the 49ers with PJ Walker. And then last week, he was the weird game that I referenced with only 22 receiving yards. It was a weird week. He had 8 targets, but only had 2 receptions. So to me, that feels like the perfect opportunity to buy him to swing back the other way. It's what Amari Cooper has been like his entire career. And his main line in this one is 50.5. But the thing is, in every single game this year that he's gone over 50 receiving yards, he's hit at least 80. So it's one of those things where, in my opinion, it doesn't make sense to take him at his main line. It makes sense to take him at a pumped up prop or to just take the under. So in this case, obviously we're taking the pumped up prop. He's got a great matchup this week against the Seahawks. And I will say this, I'm not scared off whether it's Deshaun Watson or PJ Walker against this matchup. I think that they're going to have success throwing the ball. The Seahawks rank 21st in terms of passing yards allowed per game. And when you look at their advanced stats, they're 19th ranked in terms of passing defense, but they're 3rd best rushing defense. Teams can't run on Seattle, but they can pass. The Browns obviously try to be run heavy, but if they don't have success, they're going to have to pass. Cooper got 8 targets last week. He's probably going to have 8 to 10 targets again. Probably will have more success than 2 receptions for 22 yards. This is another one that props.cash is on our side. They have him, I think, at 83 receiving yards. I know they have him above the 80 receiving yard number. That's great news for us. That's our third pick. Next up, our fourth and final pick of the evening. A.J. Brown, 125 plus receiving yards, plus 285 odds at Caesars. Number one, the most important point that I have to make for this one is that A.J. Brown is a monster and an awesome player. But the reason why I am making this a play is mostly because of the narrative. So A.J. Brown has had 125 or more receiving yards in 5 straight games. That tied the record for most consecutive games with at least 125 receiving yards, tied with Calvin Johnson. Both Nick Sirianni and A.J. Brown were asked about that, and they all said the right things. You know, he's a great player. It's great to be in the same conversation as Calvin Johnson. But I also know that Nick Sirianni is very aware of these types of things, and he's very narrative driven. And I think he wants his guy to break the record. I really do. Luckily, this is a good opportunity to do so. They're playing the Commanders on Sunday. The Eagles played October 1st. A.J. Brown had his best game of the year, 175 yards and 2 touchdowns. Now, the cornerback that A.J. Brown burned in that game, he has since been benched. But they're still a horrible defense. It's still going to be a plus matchup for A.J. Brown. The Commanders give up the 5th most passing yards per game and have the 6th worst passing defense in the NFL, according to DVOA. And A.J. Brown is just uncoverable. Even if you try to dedicate more coverage to him to take him away, he had 2 monster plays on a scramble drill last week against the Dolphins, and there's nothing you can do about that. Through 7 games, here are the number of targets that A.J. Brown has gotten. 10, 6, that's the lowest. Then 14, 13, 8, 9, and then last week he had 15 targets. Jalen Hurts loves him. I think they would love for him to get the record. So I'm going to take this narrative-based prop for plus 285 odds. Rounding out our fourth and final pick of the evening. If we can get one of the first 3 to cash, there's a guarantee we will be profitable. If we can get 2 of any combination to cash, we will be very profitable. If we get all 4, we will be rich. So let's hope for that. And that's all I got. So 4 plays for you guys to lock in. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff helps me out a ton. Appreciate everybody for watching, and have a good one.